I think you will find it exciting as well. There was a lot of going back and forth, a lot of learning about Rock Island's infrastructure, and I think we have a good project to share with you today. I would like to start by introducing my team. Joe Bosch is our area general manager. Amanda Sheposh, who is our lead engineer on the project. We have Bob Zumbalan, who was also lead engineer on the project. We have Daryl Baker, who is our operations manager and will be in charge of leading the implementation efforts. And then we have Jeff Carstensen, who is account executive in our Moline branch office, and worked with our team and with us jointly on your facilities part of the project. I'm an account executive working on the project as well. My name is Roman Arsanagic. So today what I would like to do, I need to get a clicker first. So we will go in not necessarily this order, but we will talk briefly about the project benefit summary. That's actually the next slide. Where were we and how did the project evolve? As you know, we were selected through the RFP and we were awarded a project development agreement at the amount of $675,000 to develop a detailed study, identify savings, efficiencies, and propose a contract. So we will then review facilities, water metering, wastewater, solar, photovoltaic, street lights, and then we also have a cash flows and financing to talk about you. At any point, if you would like to stop us, ask questions, if something is not clear, please do not hesitate to do so. The project benefits, very summary of what does this project bring to City of Rock Island, is that it addresses very significant capital needs in 5 different areas. And the project originally was estimated to be about $17 million. We came up with a $14.6 million in project. And 11.3 of those are savings that are real, tangible, that are actually already being spent in your budgets. We are just using savings into a more productive use. Almost all of the labor and local and subcontractors will be local, using union labor. We understood that as a priority for you, and we made it our priority. It was not difficult. You have a number of good companies in the area, us being one of them. So we will be able to meet that goal. One point of responsibility and reliability in a timely installation is absolutely what we will deliver. We expect a 12-month installation. And I will talk about reliability and responsibility in one of the slides that are coming. Price guarantee, there will be no price changes or price increases. This is the price and includes everything. Randy asked me, we basically, everything in the areas that we're covering is addressed. And if it is not, we missed it, we have to, it is our responsibility to cover it then. One that I'm actually most proud of, and it might be more difficult to kind of explain and comprehend, is proactive versus reactive management of infrastructure. Very often we see, due to budget constraints, due to limits of the just staff availability, infrastructure is addressed very often in a reactive mode. Something goes wrong, oh, let's see how we can address that particular item. We took 5 months to think about your infrastructure, about your needs, about your plans, how to run it in the best, most efficient way. This did not happen in a vacuum. Your staff was involved in every step. We have bi-weekly meetings. We had numerous conversations, presentations. So this will save numerous emergency expense dollars, capital dollars, and I'm not listing here, but hundreds, if not thousands of hours of planning of your staff managing separate contracts. 5 components of the infrastructure are municipal facilities. water metering and advanced metering infrastructure. I will talk about that. That's wastewater treatment plants, solar photovoltaic, and streetlights. Just a very brief reminder, so how this was procured was through Illinois Local Government Energy Conservation Act, performance contracting known more popularly, and there are three key elements within this procurement. We obviously will and are meeting all three. So under project development agreement, we identified energy and operational inefficiencies and quantified them. So we went through, I believe Randy shared the tables of various utility spends that you currently have, the operational, material, maintenance costs throughout the infrastructure reviewed. So we identified these inefficiencies, the monies that are already in your budget. Then the goal is obviously to how can we convert, how can we use this money that already is being spent into a more productive ways. Instead of paying utility bills, how can we pay for the new, better, more reliable equipment? And then finally, once we implement the project in 12 months or so, we will stand by we will have a guarantee for up to 20 years on the product and implementation that the project will actually work. As an illustration of what I just said, I like to use this graphic here. If you look on the right-hand side of the project, that's kind of a more conventional approach. So for example, there are 6 facilities that we're addressing under facilities. There are 2 wastewater treatment plants and numerous sub-projects under there, streetlights. So there are literally dozens and dozens of smaller projects. If you were to procure this in a conventional, traditional way, bidding it out, you would have to be responsible for hiring various engineering firms. They would come up with bids, bid it out, hold numerous contracts, manage them, be responsible for the implementation, for the cost control. Under performance contracting, we are, that's the one on the left-hand side, we are ultimately responsible for the full implementation responsibility. We are every aspect of the implementation is on us. Next 2 slides are our cash flows. I'm sure there will be more questions on these. So for now, this is the first year identifying all the project costs and then identifying various forms of savings that we found per project, and then the first year rebates that we will capture as well. Rebates are about $569,000. At least, again, if you have any questions, please stop and ask. This is the same cash flow just for the 20 years, and so it shows utility savings, meter operational savings, all kinds of. So total savings over the 20 years is $11.3 million, and rebates of about almost $570,000 expected. They should arrive in year 1. Currently, under this financial scenario, we would be using the rebates to pay down the project. And now I'm going to go into the specifics. Any questions so far? Anything? Go ahead.
If you go back to the one slide to the 20-year cash flow.
Yes.
The far right-hand column says balance.
So there are different methods, and there are different methods of organizing financing. So the goal would be for each and every year to structure payment that the city would make towards the loan to balance, to be equal to the guaranteed savings that will be there. So there would be no variability of any kind.
So on the extreme right-hand border, it looks like there's something that was cut off there, like there's a number.
No, that's just $1 balance.
And then down below it says 6 and 25 for total. Those are dollars?
I'm not sure where 6 and 20.
Yeah, it's visible on my copy.
Yes, it's 6 and 25. So that's what really, when you add them all up, and the last year the balance would be $6.
And the
So the total is 25.
The total loan payment is listed as 20,530, excuse me,
20 million.
20,539,000.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's what we would have to finance
That would be over the 20 years, yes,
if we did the entire project.
correct.
Okay.
This is we went through numerous iterations of the project. And the project as it stands today, and you know, your staff can speak to it, but these are the iterations that they think, and we agree, is the most plausible, most logical approach. This is not only about savings, it's also about addressing infrastructure in an organized fashion, addressing significant needs that the city has along these 5 areas of improvements.
And could you briefly explain, well, 2 of the headings in particular at the top of the chart, total measured savings, total non-measured savings, and contributions?
So total measured savings are larger savings. So they're about 4 or 5 areas of improvements that are easy to measure and that we will be measuring. So each and every year that we would come verify that the savings are. There are a number of savings. So let me go into this 1 year. So just to give you an example, these are measured. The reason why they're measured is because they are economically easier, cost-wise, they're effective to be measured. We do have, and we are equally confident that the smaller utility savings will materialize. As a matter of fact, this is probably a conservative number, but these are per building and per project smaller in value, so it would not be cost-effective to spend engineering time verifying a $400 savings. So only for that reason they were put in a category of non-measured, but there is a full logic, and it's explained how we came up with those numbers. And then on the utility and meter savings, those are basically materials and contracts that can be and will be avoided once the project is implemented.
And then also, since you're on that 1-year cash flow, the capital avoidance is 0 on that chart. There's nothing listed at all.
So that is actually, so that would be the capital dollars that the city would need to contribute on an annual basis to match the project. So to give you an example here, for example, over 20 years, so the total savings are $11 million. City would need to contribute $8 million over 20 years. So that's this number. That's the avoidance of capital dollars. All of these projects that we are implementing, you will need to do regardless. Okay, they are up and coming. They're infrastructure needs across your infrastructure. By us going through the systematically and finding savings and kind of organizing projects in a way that can be delivered rapidly, efficiently, thinking about the infrastructure in a holistic way, not by replacing like for like, we are able to derive additional savings and kind of come up with benefits. That's where this 11.3 million is coming from, but the savings are not large enough. I guess that's a good thing as well, to cover the full project. So 11.3 would be savings, 8.6, I don't see it here, actually I'm going to open my own. Is it 8.6? Would be over the 20-year period. So the city would be contributing about $300,000 annually.
I think I understand. And my question was why there was no figures in the 1-year cash flow. It's because there's nothing listed except the first year.
Correct.
And then the 20-year cash flow, that's where the figures appear.
Yes, and this is just one of the models. The city does not have to choose this kind of structuring. When last time I talked to Stephanie, I think, or Randy, I'm not sure, this is called a stepped approach. City has its own reserves, some ideas of how to contribute. So I think there's actually a better alternative than this, but this is kind of a good illustration of how the project could look like. Go ahead.
So this is a stepped approach where the payments are lower and then get higher as the years go by. We would likely do a flat, so the total overall cost with financing would be lower than what you see there. If you do a stepped approach, obviously there's more interest on it.
You're
because
carrying
paying
interest.
less upfront.
Yeah.
And let me ask this question now, because we were given 4 options to consider. The first option being do nothing, the second option being do only those projects that have 100% positive return. The third option being do the 3 projects that have a positive return and use the savings to fund as many other projects as we can. And the fourth was to do everything and utilize some capital portion of gaming money and enterprise funds. On option number 3, do the 3 projects that have a positive return and use the savings to fund as many other projects as we can. We would still have to borrow money in order to do the ones that we were gonna do.
You would always borrow money, it's just whether there's enough in the savings to pay that payment or whether there's additional need.
But we wouldn't have to borrow as much, is that true?
You would not, but you wouldn't save as much either. you
Okay.
know, So and that's why the recommendation is to do the whole project, which is why we entered into it, is to use the savings from some areas to offset costs in other areas
Thank
that
you.
we otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
Very good. There's a lot to grasp here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, absolutely.
You mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that the majority of the work will be done by local contractors and local workers. Is there a certain scope or a certain trade that you weren't able to find locally, or just, I mean, 100% local then? Yeah. Okay, the way that you,
So short of engineering
yeah,
and some project management,
yeah,
yes.
the actual worker bees
Yes.
replacing
Well,
parts.
worker bees, worker companies, we are local as well. We have a lot of capabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I went with your firm. And then just for my own curiosity, how does the Prevailing Wage Act work in all of this? I mean, the physical improvements, replacing boilers or HVAC equipment, is all of that subject to the Illinois Prevailing Wage Act?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And actually, I would say I am confident that every company is union as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You talked about the guarantee. Is there a fee to that?
There is a monthly fee. So here, for example, in this cash flow is there is a $51,000 an annual fee to cover all the projects. So that's why we were.
So we're on the hook for that 51?
You're not on the hook. That's an annual contract. As a matter of fact, we have here only 3 years very often. Clients sometimes, and we are obliged to offer this for 20 years, and we will gladly do that. Sometimes clients decide, okay, let's treat this as an insurance, year 1, 2, 3, everything is going well. Maybe we don't want to continue paying for that fee. It is completely up to you and your choice. Should you notice that there is something wrong with the project, that we're not delivering the numbers that we committed to, you should keep the numbers, and it really happens rarely. All the numbers here are derated, so we actually expect they should be better than this.
Do you ever waive those fees?
You kind of want quality work. I mean, you cannot waive somebody's hours and hours of work. You can really bury them somewhere else. This is transparent. Any other questions? Shall I continue then?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So we're kind of going into the specific scope projects. The one that, if you asked me in April of this year, what will be the biggest chunk of this project, I would say 100% water meters, okay? We have a good news and a bad news here. The good news is, and here is the table with your with your water metering population. You've installed most of your water meters in 98 and 99. We thought, and one of the first steps that we did was we pulled the billing extract of your utility bills. We found what kind of meters, what kind of savings. We kind of studied the breakdown of your utility data. And based on that data, we actually pulled statistically valid sample of each and every metering population. What we found is that your large meters are very inaccurate. 30, 40 years ago, when they were installed, there were only certain choices of water meterings, of water meters, and your meters are quite inaccurate. So we are strongly recommending to replace all of the large water meters. And it's not just replacing meter for meter, it's kind of repiping, adjusting that. There's a lot of work involved in these 100 meters. There's very often also we need to be cognizant of when can we do that, because people don't like to be disturbed during, or usually that work is done after hours, or it's more sensitive. We found that your 5/8 meters, so that's your typical, in Rock Island, the typical residential water meter is 5/8. They're accurate. So they are, on average, 99% accurate, which falls under American Water Works Association standard. And for that reason, they just kind of took away the funding source from us. That doesn't mean that you should not, in the near future, consider doing this project as a capital project. There are a couple of challenges still remain. Even though your meters are accurate, they are 20 years old. They will just stop working in the future. And you do have an efficient way of reading water meters. Right now, you're pretty much reading them manually. It's a walk-by system. You can do kind of drive-by if they're driving really slow. And the challenge there is that, so you're billing quarterly, and you're actually reading meters every month, but different parts of the town. So it is very difficult to understand how much water do you produce versus how much water you sell. And that difference it makes it very difficult for trending your losses and pinpointing efficiencies. So because we were looking for the money in order to fund the project, we abandoned, for the most part, the small meters. We strongly recommend replacing large meters. But that is a project, that is the situation with the project right now. And as a matter of fact, I wanted to use the illustration. Here is how the project in the first column, how it looked when just before we signed the project development agreement. So at this point, in the first column, we had a couple of pages of information from the RFP. We had 2 days of site visits, and we maybe had 15, 20 hours maximum of conversations with your staff. We were confident water meter is important. It turns out that they were still accurate. Wastewater we always knew was important. We found it's even more important than thought, and so we are recommending actually a bigger project there. Facilities are kind of in a ballpark, but while we walk through facilities, we did find additional projects, especially in library, fire station, and small project in public works. To give you an example of the fire station, the chillers there are not that old. They are old, but they're not that old. Why we are recommending replacing them is not because of the chiller, but because of the piping and the water treatment that goes into the chiller was not addressed last time it was done, and the chillers are failing. So this project is not only about energy savings, it's really about addressing your capital needs the way they should be addressed. Okay? If you tell me, we want, can you do it smaller, can you do it lesser? Yeah, we can. This is the setup that we think is the optimum. We spent 5 months thinking about it. Streetlights are fairly simple. It's really just a question of quantities. Price is a little bit lower than originally, but basically you're getting the streetlights that will have a better illumination, safer, better looking, much more reliable, much less maintenance, more than 50% energy savings. Solar, again, But you know what? I'm maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself. We will address all of these as we go. So the first one, after the water metering, any questions on water metering? Okay. I'm going to ask Mandy to talk about the wastewater.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I'll start with four favorite words. I will be brief. So I want to first start out, I've got a chest cold, so you'll have to excuse me. I want to start out by thanking Lisa and Jason, who've been very helpful in terms of getting our staff engaged, or, in terms of vetting the project and making sure we're providing the most benefit. We had quite a few value engineering sessions with them and with the entire Rock Island staff in terms of making sure that we're providing the most benefit here and not giving things that don't deliver, either a necessary capital improvement based on equipment age and condition, or not energy focused. And then stepping back as well, I want to thank the entire Rock Island staff for all their involvement on this project. We've come a long way. So with wastewater, we started by evaluating 5 different opportunities. The city has 2 major treatment plants. The Mill Street treatment plant's the one I'll focus on now. So from those 5 opportunities, we really focused in on 2 that we think provide the most benefit, and again, provide the most focused infrastructure investment to allow you to continue to operate meeting permit and to give you the longevity to meet that permit for the next foreseeable future. So you see that I have categorized kind of the major pieces of improvements here from Mill Street as well as for Southwest wastewater treatment plant. Aeration improvements are the 2 projects. Aeration is typically the biggest energy consumer, as is the case with these 2 treatment plants. It's also kind of the core operating process to make sure that you're meeting your permit. It's what drives the biological process in itself. So I've categorized these into like energy preventative maintenance and future proofing. But the long and the short of it is that the Mill Street treatment plant has equipment for the aeration process that's 20 years old, has its 20th birthday this year, and the equipment design life is 20 years. At the Southwest wastewater treatment plant, you're in a little bit more dire of a situation. The equipment's 40 years old. Again, it's designed, it's meant to run for 20 years. The fact that it's gone further than that is part luck, it's part, the good work from the operations staff, but you're really, you can look at it as doing an exceptional job, and there's some truth to that, definitely, but you're also working on borrowed time in a very real fashion. So in terms of making sure that you've got the longevity, again, to meet these critical permits, or the critical processes that drive those permit regulations, we've focused in on these 2 projects. Again, aeration improvements. You've got considerable energy savings from both, and we think that it's going to give you a solution that allows you to walk away from that process in its entirety for the next 20 years. Please.
You mentioned the Southwest wastewater treatment plant, and I'm looking at the same slide that you have up there on the screen. Can you talk a little bit about tank repairs?
Absolutely.
Because I noticed that there was only 1 X in the chart for preventative maintenance. I wanted to understand more about that.
Absolutely. So your tanks are from the 70s. They're old package plant tanks that were converted to be the current process. They're steel tanks. And like any steel, concrete has the tendency to get stronger over its life. Steel has a tendency to degrade. And so especially when you get at that water line, you see the most corrosive environment for the process. And so both of those 2 package plants have failure of the steel and need not just to the outside structure itself, but also to interior baffles, handrails, walkways. So this is manufacturer recommended tank repairs to those 2 treatment processes. I think when we looked at the previous slide that indicated the big difference from preliminary design to current design, I'll flip back for your, obviously wastewater stands out as one of the heavier hitters, and it's things like those tank repairs that, and upon preliminary investigation, that was unforeseen, but it doesn't make sense, in our minds, it doesn't make sense for us to provide you a fully new system that's going to give you, 20 years of operating life and then deliver it to a tank that's still failing. So that's that item in specific.
Thank you.
All right, I'll hand it back. Thank you.
Thank you.
The reason why tank repairs doesn't have energy, because their tank repair doesn't have energy component. It's just repair of a tank.
I understand that.
Yeah. The next one is street lighting. I kind of briefly talked about it. That's why I didn't want to talk about it twice. It's fairly straightforward. The street lights that are city-owned, that are not LED already, are to be retrofitted with over 50% of the energy savings, improved quality of light due to superior color rendering. This is not going to be a yellow light, but kind of a white light, better quality, safer for pedestrians, for drivers. If there are any surveillance cameras, overall just improved safety. Also reliability of the equipment. This light is to last for a long period of time versus the lights now that need to be relamped every couple of years. It's also future ready, so Internet of Things devices, as they become available and less expensive, more affordable, all this equipment will be able to be attached to these lights as well. Any questions on lighting?
This is just for City of Rock Island owned streetlights?
Correct.
Not the Mid-American ones?
Correct.
And does this include our streetlights that are along state highways or routes within the city? Is there any trouble with DOT?
I think the only, and I really,
Most of them are, so it's the one-ways.
Right.
Yeah,
And they would be included in this?
yes, they are.
Okay.
That's the majority of our lights, and then downtown and 17th Street, which was already done, but most of them are along the
Yeah.
state highways in the city.
yes. Anything else? Okay, the next topic, facilities, and I'm going to ask Jeff Carstensen to talk about that.
Thanks, guys, for your time tonight. I want to start out thanking city staff. We had many walkthroughs through the facilities over the last 5-6 months, and I just wanted to thank them for bearing with us, and we took a lot of time. So, but we wanted to be thorough. We wanted to look at everything as kind of a holistic approach, not only just your equipment, but how the utilities to the equipment is being delivered. And we did find some additional things throughout some of the buildings that, unfortunately, we need to recognize. Like Erwin said, it's things that don't have energy savings, but it's inevitably things that need to be recognized. So we'll start out here with City Hall. This building here, a lot of the utilities here are old. The boiler downstairs is currently failing. I think it's limping along right now. As a matter of fact, I think this spring they were hoping that they could get this thing changed out for the next heating season. So I think James is doing a good job keeping her chugging away for the rest of this heating season. So with that, we looked at replacing that old boiler with 2 high-efficient steam boilers. So what that does is give you redundancy, first of all. If one boiler goes down, you got another backup. And then all of a sudden, it's not an emergency repair to hit it, to get the heat back on. It can be repaired and maintained during normal business hours. The next thing are your current air handling units. Units throughout the building, tucked away in mezzanines and closets and different things like that. We looked at a couple different approaches on this. The most feasible approach was to rebuild these air handlers. To supply new air handlers, they're just larger, take up more space, and it's just a lot more costly. So we're proposing to just go ahead and take all the components and replace them on the air handler, pretty much make them new. I mean, an air handler is just a fan in a box, so all the components inside will pretty much be rebuilt or replaced, along with their controls. Currently, everything's being controlled by the old 1960s pneumatics. This will all be converted to direct digital controls. Each air handler has an associated condensing unit. The condensing units are limping along. They're all within 25 years old. They operate with the R22 refrigerant that as of this year is no longer being produced. So when we are replacing, having to recharge equipment, the costs are getting right now currently extremely expensive to get that refrigerant, because it's just going to be, it's not manufactured, it's just going to be recycled refrigerant. So then the new condensing units are much more efficient, utilizing today's R410A refrigerant is pretty much what it's going to be. Throughout the areas, I believe up here in council chambers and down through on the first floor, we have various radiators. They're just steam radiators that have a control valve and a trap. We're going to replace the traps. Are probably mostly all failed. They're tucked away, out of sight, out of mind, and when they fail, people really don't know it. And that's a huge inefficiency to be recognized. Like I said earlier, the entire building is going to be retrofitted out with pneumatics. We're going to get rid of the air compressor. Everything's going to be digital, all on a server. And I put server in this one because we have multiple facilities throughout the city that everything's going to talk back into one server. It's going to be site supervised that way, so people, building directors, maintenance people can pull each building up on their own head end, and it ultimately is managed by the server physically located in this building. So I kind of put that ECM in this one, so for City Hall.
A question real quick, is keeping with steam versus hot water, is there,
Well, so we looked at, the first approach we went to was a hot water approach. It is a little bit more efficient to operate with hot water, but it just didn't offset the cost of replacing all the steam piping in this building. Because the piping is built for steam, you've got steam pipe and you've got condensate pipe return. It would all have to be replaced. And, to get in all these walls, and it really blew the budget up on City Hall. So, like I said, our first approach was that. We dialed it back. We got more to a feasible approach, and that was, I hate to say like for like, but it is still steam, but it's going to be a lot more efficient steam.
So that's what they did present to staff, and basically staff said, that's too expensive, you need to go
yeah, exactly.
look at something different, because
Knew it-
it was quite
Thought it was
expensive.
a lot more efficient, but.
Yes, yeah, and city management had great arguments. They said, well, that's a lot of money to stick in this building. That, what happens if we're out of this building in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? You just hey, whatever. I'm rambling.
That's
Any
fine.
other questions on the City Hall so far? Central Fire Station. I want to correct my colleague here. He was saying chillers are failing because of the water treatment. That's true, but the boilers that they have there, they're roughly 10 years old. They are an 80% boiler efficiency, and they're not done with their typical lifespan, but because of the poor water treatment throughout the last 10 years, it's degrading the heat exchangers in the boilers. So along with the piping in the building and all of the fan coil units, it's full of iron, bacteria buildups, different things like that within the water treatment. So obviously, if we replace all this equipment, water treatment is very important to maintain, with this and prevent this stuff from happening. Not that it was neglected, it was just probably forethought. So we recommend obviously replacing the chiller. That chiller is probably close to 35 years old. It's very inefficient, operates with R22 refrigerant. And the air handler, it's currently a multi-zone. There's a way to retrofit that cost effectively and turn it into a variable air volume. You have better controls and it's much more efficient. You're not wasting a lot of air, heat, and cool. So that's an ECM we recommend. The pneumatic to DDC retrofit, like City Hall, we recommend doing that. And then the boilers and the 16 fan coils and their associated controls. Public Works, not a whole lot there. There is a package rooftop that we recommend pulling out. It's getting towards the end of its life expectancy. And again, costs are starting to build up as compressors fail, different things like that. Repairs get costlier. Operates with, like I said, the old R22 refrigerant. That's and then we're going to put a new, basically a DDC router. So it's going to take all that rooftop information and bring that into the server also. So now we'll be able to view that, maintain that, remotely or local, troubleshoot. Martin Luther King Center.
Before you move on, let me
Yeah,
just ask
go
a
ahead.
simple question, simple for you probably. What does packaged mean?
So packaged is where all of the functioning is all into one unit. So it's got the blower, the condenser, the compressor, the evaporator, the controls are all packaged all in one unit. Where a non-packaged unit would be like air handlers you have here. You have an air handler up in the ceiling, you have a boiler down in the basement, you have a condensing unit out on the roof. So you've got remote components where a packaged air handler, rooftop unit, all of them components are all in that. So you don't need, boilers don't feed it, chillers don't feed it, different things like that. All has its own
Thank you.
You bet. MLK, there are two existing rooftops on the older portion of the building that we've recognized to be old, failing, inefficient, R22 refrigerant. Repairs are getting costly on that. There is some saving recommendation or recognition on that. There's some interior areas, and I can't remember the gentleman's name that we kind of interviewed with. Since day one in these areas, they have no controls. Whatever the temperature is in these areas. So our recommendation would be put 6 VAV boxes, which are variable air volume controls, which basically control the air in and out of that space. Then you give you better controllability. Not really a savings factor, but more of a comfort factor while you're doing it. Let's get this brought in. And then once again, controls on them VAV boxes, and then the 2 rooftop air handling units would all be brought into the DDC server. Library, one of the same things with the chiller. It's aged, costly repairs, R22 refrigerant. We're also installing an additional boiler for redundancy. That boiler is going to be the most high efficient boiler on today's market. And like we were doing in fire station, we're going to retrofit a multi-zone air handler to VAV. Retrofit their DD pneumatic controls, all to direct digital controls. And then we did recognize post project development agreement with Kelly. We had some very extensive walkthroughs with the library. Her fan coils are failing. Parts are obsolete, and they're finding themselves with leaky condensate pans and their epoxy in them and different things like that. The companies are gone. Fans are failing. Coils are plugged up, and ultimately they're poor control. One of the things that we recognize by replacing these fan coil units are going to be better controllability. They will be on the DDC. And the way that the coils are structured, we can actually throw in dehumidification sequence of operation. And I know dehumidifying a library is very important, not only on the fan coils, but the air handlers. For the books, exactly. So our recommendation would be replace all the fan coil units. Some of the piping, one of the things that Kelly had said that when they were making repairs, they'd go to isolate each individual fan coil unit. There are old globe valves. They're all seized up. They essentially have to drain the entire hot water, chill water system just to make one repair. And it was the same thing with the fire department. I hate to jump back and forth. I think they had a small pinhole leak above the chief's office, and one of our local contractors ended up having to remove 30 or 35 foot of pipe just to get some solid steel back in that piping. It was just crumbling and falling apart. So, RIFAC, they've got 2 large steam boilers in there. They run year-round. They run year-round to generate domestic water, hot water for showers, and also for pool. Our recommendation would be get rid of the steam out of the building, go to hot water, install some domestic hot water heaters, so you don't have to be running boilers in the summertime. And ultimately, these boilers are going to be much more efficient. We're going to retrofit another multi-zone air handler 3 to VAV, and I believe there's 4 other air handlers that we're going to pull off of the pneumatics and put on the direct digital controls, and their associated condensing units, R22, very old, costly repairs, different things like that. So, you know, just kind of overall with to go back on the DDC and some of the benefits of being able to have that is to be able to do occupancy and night setbacks and to shut equipment off when it's not necessary to operate. Just that savings really adds up in utilities. So it's a great thing to have.
Just for clarification, if I could,
Yes, sir.
please. So you're saying that the boilers, the two existing boilers that would be replaced, those are for heat in the building,
Yes,
and the domestic hot water, natural gas heaters would be for the showers and
yep,
the hot tub or the swimming pool or
correct.
whatever?
Yep. So your building heating boilers are off during the summer operation, during summertime. Where right now, these big heating boilers that are supposed to heat the building are doing a very, very small load, essentially just cooking, just heating your domestic water and whatever pool heat you may need. It's a huge, very, very inefficient. Overkill is right.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Question that maybe I'm just missing something here, but on several of these projects, you talk about having redundant boilers.
Yes.
Isn't that going to increase our cost, our daily operational cost? You're running two systems instead of one, and is it necessary to have the redundancy?
So when I talk about redundancy, I want to, we're not running two boilers, especially with the boiler portion of the redundancy is the fact that you're going to have a boiler that's down while the other boiler is operating, and you can program them to share hours, lead lag back and forth. The redundancy is for the other boiler to operate while the other boiler is being repaired, maintained, or is broke down. So there's your redundant boiler. Yep. Good question, though. I mean, you think if you're running both of them, where's your energy savings? But you're still only running one. Anybody else?
I guess the biggest question that I have is, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think we need redundant boilers. I mean, if we're getting new boilers, then we shouldn't have any boilers down for a while. But what is actually failing? I mean, I hear a lot of talk about it's 20 years old, it's
Yeah.
not efficient, yada, 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 we're working on it. But what is actually failing
Specifically on boilers?
on everything?
All right, so we'll start with boilers. Depending on the water treatment, you have a heat exchanger. So on one side of the heat exchanger is going to be a flame, and on the other side of the heat exchanger is going to be water. Throughout years and years and years of water just eroding away on your heat exchanger, you'll eventually lose integrity and you'll get leaks in the heat exchanger. Either they'll have to be replaced or plugged, depending on what type of fire tube or water tube boiler. So I would say with a boiler is going to be your heat exchanger and your main shell. So just like with wastewater treatment, water, steel, air, you have oxidation, rust. It just eats out. It's just going to start eating away, or it is eating away. And then without water treatment, it eats away that much faster. Water treatment gives you inhibitors to coat the steel of piping heat exchangers to keep oxidation from attacking the steel. And when you don't have that, it rusts. So I believe downstairs we have a heat exchanger failing. I think we have some boiler tubes that have failed and are plugged right now. So reduced capacity, efficiency goes down. So the other parts are probably minimal, controllers, fire eyes, igniters. Them are probably more of the routine repairs on a boiler. Chillers, once you start getting 15, 20 years, ASHRAE is the agency, I guess, that would kind of set standards on life expectancies of HVAC equipment. They kind of, when I say more costly or expenses, on a chiller you're talking compressors, you're talking the heat exchangers, just like a boiler, but just as on the cold side of a chiller. Them are more prone to happen. A lot of these projects are eliminating any capital future expenditures.
So if you go back to the slide, the 1-year cash flow and the operational savings, that is either our average of parts or contract maintenance that we've had for the last 3 years. So in City Hall, you're saving $24,700 a year. That will be eliminated from the budget. Library is almost $24,000, and RIFAC is $25,000. So most of that is contract maintenance that's coming in on an emergency or a contract just to repair. And anyone from the library or Mike Bartels can tell you how many times someone is down, James is down here trying to fix something, and then we have to call in one of the contractors. So those, I guess, are the savings.
Right.
Those are what you see, and any of them could probably talk to specifically what has failed over the past few years, if you're interested.
We talked about, on several occasions, of removing the pneumatic controls, going to a digital control. I assume then that the pneumatic controls are not working anymore, or they're not efficient. And what is the life expectancy of the digital controls versus a pneumatic type control? I mean, I guess I'm looking for the significant savings there.
Yep, no, that's a great question also. So, the support for pneumatic controls are almost gone. They are still being manufactured for replacement parts. The industry is no longer teaching pneumatics to mechanics. It's just the way of the future. They're harder to get repaired. Pneumatics is another thing that needs constant calibration, quarterly, 4 times a year. The mechanics going in, they're calibrating these receiver controllers, all these components to pneumatics. High maintenance in your pneumatic. If you get water through the airlines or oil through the airlines, you're ruining the controllers. And then the fact that setbacks, time of day schedules, different things like that are just not physically here to do any of that right now. So DDC pretty much pays for itself when it's just a pneumatic to direct digital control retrofit. It pays for itself pretty quick.
What's the life expectancy of the digital?
With any electronics, I'll speak for John's Controls. We are always reverse compatible with our controls. So our new controllers that are on the wall right now can still talk to controllers that are 35 years old. So to answer that is, it's kind of a moving target because they're not physical moving parts like pneumatic controllers are. These are printed circuit boards, switches and relays. So, yeah, 20, 30 years, pretty easily.
Thank you.
You bet.
In that same line of questioning that Alderman Poulos was referring to as far as like life expectancy, what is the anticipated life expectancy or of these replacement boilers that will be coming into being?
I would say the boilers are probably 30-year, chillers 25 years, air handlers 25, 30. I'd say everything 25, 30 year.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Do we have any sort of, I assume we have manufacturer's warranty for all these things, boilers, chillers, et cetera. Is there any warranty that Johnson Controls provides for the installation or anything above and beyond manufacturer's warranty for any of this?
I would say, as a branch, for our installation, we always have a 1-year parts and labor.
Okay.
With a contract like
You
this,
are
I'm not
getting
sure.
Actually, most of that equipment would be Johnson Control. We manufacture a lot of this equipment, so it would be, factory pricing.
Yeah.
It's a standard. We definitely recommend service agreement. We did not necessarily want to, we can offer that. We did not necessarily want to kind of force ourselves into that because of existing relationships, but we can definitely offer a service agreement as well. I would just like to mention this modular boilers, and please stop me. I am not an engineer, but I asked that very same question. Why do we need redundancy? It's a brand new boiler. These boilers, right now, I don't know if you know, that the current equipment are huge. These new boilers are tiny little things, and actually, when the temperature goes down, you need both of them. So it is redundancy, but it's also kind of the efficiency of the equipment. So it's not like one will be parked until repaired. They actually can be used. That's how,
Yep. Yeah, the new boilers today are we call them suitcase boilers. They're meant to go through doorways. They come in pieces, but you would be amazed with the boiler you're pulling out and the boiler that's coming in to replace it. 3 boilers can sit in that same footprint. So and the overall cost of a new modular boiler is really not really not like the cost of putting these big, heavy cast iron Kiwani boilers in back in the 60s. That was a big feat to have. This is a couple guys with a trolley running down the stairs and throwing it in and piping it up. It just makes sense. It's kind of industry standard. I mean, it's a great question, Jenny, that why redundancy? You know, it's kind of the standard anymore. A lot of building owners would say we just spent all this money and we got a boiler down and we don't have heat in this building. So with that.
Another quick question. We talked about service agreements. Is there any way that you could get those figures sent over to council so that we can look at those service agreement numbers and
Yep.
those, please? Thank you.
You bet.
And we do still have some of that in the budget, so when we eliminated some of our contractual maintenance, it wasn't everything, it was only the things that were due to emergencies and due to the old equipment. So there's always a need for some type of service contract, and we'll get you those numbers, because we already have that in the budget.
Okay. So really the idea here is you have equipment, speaking specifically about, let's say, facilities. You have environments that where the climate, the temperatures are not comfortable, at least that's where reliability is not there, where it's almost like driving a 30-year-old car that's kind of rusted underneath. So yes, it's still maybe running and taking you, but we have identified through the process, we've identified that actually efficiencies and savings, if converted towards paying for the project, in our opinion, makes sense. It's obviously for you to make a decision. Final one is a solar. We really consider different options. We started with considering 1 or 2 megawatt greenfield. Very often, very soon we learned that basically if we were to recommend this, first of all, the challenge, the rebates were or incentives were oversubscribed at the time. And then the second thing is so the only real rebates available at the time or today are the ones where for 10 kilowatt installations or less. So the solution that we are recommending is we took 17 buildings that have consumption of more than 10 kilowatts, and then we're recommending you having those, so basically total of 170 kilowatts. The total price is about $752,000, but there are incentives of $374,000, making the project about $377,000. Basically, the project pays for itself in 20 years. It's a wash with cost of financing, and then it has another 10 years of useful life. That does not preclude the city, and I know Alderman Keenan is very much interested in this, in power purchase agreements and partnering with other communities. We actually approached that option as well. We have some contacts, some suggestions on that. But knowing that the rest of the council is very much looking at kind of the financial impact, we did not bring it at this point.
You stated in your evaluation that if the city chooses to pursue a PPA, you'll assist the city independent of this contract.
Correct.
You know, with the power purchase agreement, there's no cost up front, and it's the amount of energy that they could produce lowers the overall electricity by 30 to 40%. If we do the big scale and finding a developer that would do a PPA with us.
So the challenge that we found is if you do a large scale, you are selling that electricity wholesale. Mm-hmm. So you're not substituting your own consumption. Mm-hmm. So instead
but you're lowering your energy bills.
So we really tried, and these are options, but we think that this option is the most cost-effective for city facilities. Could other options be explored? Yes. And could they be viable? Yes. But we didn't explore them to the fullest.
I think cutting 752.
Mandy, actually, I would like to ask Mandy.
Cutting 752,000 out of this project, I think seeing a proposal of a PPA would be interesting.
I Absolutely agree. I think with regards to PPAs, the financial, like how attractive a PPA appears, very much depends on the terms of that PPA. What escalation rates are used, what starting energy rates are used. So we definitely think that there's a valid pursuit here. That being said, when we looked at PPA in the terms that line up with what we're proposing here, we saw it just straddling a 20-year payback as well. So it was, I agree with you that in some cases you can see the 30 to 40% payback, and there is definitely a financially viable PPA solution here. But I think in terms of, the ability to go for a broader scale will give you some benefit. So we aren't necessarily saying that this is the only solar project you should pursue. We think that with a PPA opportunity, the city has a great advantage of bringing in other community, other stakeholders and people within the community that might want to contribute or be a part of a PPA. It's just that within this financial structure, we think that a 10 kilowatt installations is going to be the best bang for the buck for the city.
I mean, my goodness, my house, which is less than 1,400 square feet, has an 8.6 kilowatt system on its roof. So 10 might sound big to us, but put in perspective, it produces a megawatt of energy for us each month.
Yeah, it keeps you well under, the concern is that if you produce more than more than a building uses, then you're not getting the value from it. So we're well under that. That's a very well taken point. You're well under the consumption of all these facilities. I think the closest that we come to is like 70% of a facility's energy consumption typically. But that being said, it is a great first step to get the city into a solar program.
So, just for clarity, was your intention regarding the solar part of the project for us to use that ourselves, that energy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, it will be 10 KRA on each and every building, and each of these buildings is consuming more than 10
so,
K.
yeah.
So, and
It's
these
net
are the best-
metering, though. It goes to the grid, what we produce. It doesn't go into the outlets, correct?
Yes,
That's what I think he was asking
yes,
about.
but it would eliminate the retail cost of energy. It would not produce at the wholesale. It would not, so it would have an impact like you were producing it for yourself.
Yeah, there are many facilities, for instance, that can accommodate a larger array than 10 kilowatts. The incentives for a city-owned facility really drop off after the 10 kilowatt size. So if you do end up pursuing a PPA that has larger that's not city-owned, a larger installation in those facilities may make sense. But we do think that, the 10 kilowatt solution, pursuing a community buy-in type of PPA program is a really nice, dovetail. Yep.
This proposal is us buying those solar panels.
Correct.
But the two can work together. We can do this
Or
and
we
still
can
continue
save
to pursue down the
or
other.
we could save $752,000 and just pursue the PPA and have them still up on the buildings and reduce our energy costs. I just like to see the numbers. It's a big chunk when you go to that first page to buying it.
It is just half of that, still a big chunk, but half of it's incentives, still 700, or 375,000, so
We
still a big
thought
chunk.
for the 10, so it is our thinking, and maybe we're conservative, but because we also hear a story of small companies, so who's interested in doing 170? Usually smaller companies. And you're committed for decades-long relationship with, you don't know how mergers and acquisitions of these companies may affect your 17 roofs. Okay? So we thought you owning your own asset and having your own destiny in your hands is kind of a better, because they are washed financially. But
We'll look at the other option too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we presented it here, to see what council wanted to
That's
do.
$0 up. My understanding is the PPA is $0 up front. The day they're installed and hooked up, it's savings for the city.
It is, but you don't get full, when you own it, you get full
40%.
advantage.
40% could be a reduction,
Could be,
which
depends
is
on.
better than zero. I mean,
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely.
And just a thought.
Yeah, oh, no.
So that is we have one more slide on financing. We do have, Johnson Controls makes no money on financing, but we have staff available to help you structure financial deals to the way you want. We're not financial advisor, so we've already been in contact and, working with this with Stephanie and are available to assist in any shape or form possible. With that said, I think we took an hour. Any other questions?
Well, regarding financing, I don't know if Stephanie or Randy's the best one, but I mean, how using the magic crystal ball. And is this going to affect our bond rating by taking on more debt, or because they see it has a dedicated source of funding it, it's not such a big deal? What is the concern with respect to our bond rating?
Stephanie can come up and talk to that briefly. She's been talking to our financial advisor, so we've been on a number of conference calls on this.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. Calculators, computers, all that good stuff. But both tax-exempt lease purchasing and bonds, which would be the two lowest costs of the way to finance this project, would add to our debt. So how would the rating agency, the investment community view this added debt? It's hard to say. You know, I've said, even when we started talking about this last spring, that this does have a good story. Now, the story isn't as good as we thought it would be, especially with the small meters not panning out. So we do have to look at other, depending on the final project, we do have to look at other sources of funds in which to pay this. But regardless, a good portion of the payments would come from guaranteed savings. And so that's part of the story that, you know, would be a good story to explain when we're talking to Moody's or S&P.
And then a large chunk from the enterprise funds too, so it is not typically what we would see. It has to come from property taxes or something like that. It
Yes,
is coming from an enterprise fund.
The majority of a payment under this current scenario that's presented tonight would be coming from the water and wastewater funds.
I guess my concern, if I may, is I don't want us to put ourselves in a situation where we have no alternative but to raise taxes for the next however many years. I would hate to look my constituents in the eye and say, oh, by the way, we know that these jobs need to be done, and we just put ourselves on the hook for another $14 million or $18 million or whatever the $20 million is the end cost was.
Well, again, this would be paid mostly out of the enterprise funds and then through reductions in the budget in other areas. So you're not going to see an increase in the general fund budget because any excess out of the general fund activities will be covered through the capital improvement portion of our gaming. That's what we're proposing. So I think this last year, 150,000 or so were these type of projects. In the future, we wouldn't have those. This would be our capital project until such time as we saw some growth in some of our areas and had some other revenue to pay off some of the debt, and we weren't reliant on the gaming anymore. So you would not see an increase in the property tax because of this.
And I would add that we've seen in our capital improvement plan the last few years a request from departments, MLK, Library, and Central Fire for HVAC improvements. And as we're going through and allocating funds, we've always pushed it out. So it has been something that we've been talking about, at least since I've been here.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question along the same lines, but not necessarily about taxes, about our infrastructure, streets, sidewalks, and other things. Are those impacted at all by us spending gaming money on this project with the Johnson Controls?
Well, most of that is now funded through our local tax and our our local gas tax and municipal fuel tax. That's typically most of that. This money is, it went to different capital projects, and the library had some, I don't remember specifically their project, but, we might do replace an air handler here or something else there. It's those type of projects that have been in the budget every year. Departments request something out of capital, so it's those projects, not the street projects, that we would pull from. So there wouldn't be an increase in that capital. It would just go to this rather than some other projects that might be in the pipeline.
Thank you.
A few other quick questions. This has been looked over by our Sustainability and Advanced Technology Consortium members? I know a number of them are out in the audience.
They're here, they've seen all the information, and after this, we'll get everyone back together, and, when we get some direction from council on where to go with this.
Okay, just to make sure that we have
Yeah.
our citizens and sort of independent eyes and ears that
Yep.
are experts on the subject matter say, yeah, actually, that would result in this much savings or whatnot. Is there an offer for, it's like, okay, so 5-10 years down the road, we want to replace the small meters. Is there options for extensions? I know when we started this, we eliminated the hydroelectric plant, but, what are the options to extending this agreement to different, whether it be a PPA electrical system or the hydroelectric power plant? Different things that we haven't looked at yet. Can we do that in 5-10 years?
So we can always look at additional phases. We're very aware of the budget constraint, and I listen to every council meeting. I don't sit here, but I listen to them all, and so I'm very aware of the taxation of the folks coming, and so we structured this project to address needs that are real. That there's nothing fancy in this project. These are addressing your capital needs in 5 areas, and impacting as pulling away from the existing budget, existing spend as much as possible. Okay, in the future, we see, yes, as meters deteriorate, that is potential project. Wastewater has number of projects. The cool thing about this approach is that there will be no need for rate increases. There are monies, as I understand, and I really don't know all the details of city working, but Randy and Stephanie told me that there are monies through enterprise funds. I know the library is contributing some, RIFAC is, I believe. But it depends on the city. We think we're addressing the most current and pressing now. In Peoria, not too far from you, we delivered 3 phases. That is, so we definitely do different phases, approach, we do approach phases as well.
Okay. Last question. The big issue here is upgrading our infrastructure and saving money. However, there is a environmental aspect of it. Do we have numbers on, how much we can be able to tout that we've lowered our carbon footprint for the city of Rock Island? All right.
It's actually easy for us. We were focused on putting the.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is probably what everybody up here is interested in, but good marketing for the city too, to be able to say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're leading in reducing our energy consumption.
Yes. I say the one that's not seen, and that will actually be very impactful, is the time that we will free up the staff from all the different bids that will be coming, but also the efficiencies that these implementations will come to free you to do other things, to free them to do other things.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
So some direction from council, additional information needed? I know we're going to get the additional information on the PPA, which shouldn't take long to put together.
Well, I think I would like to have a study session before we move forward on this with American Water. Because that could potentially have ramifications. And that was something that we had asked for in a study session.
Yep, we are going to do that after the first of the year here, so, yep.
I think that's something we need to look at before, at least I feel, before I can give any direction moving forward.
I'll give you a little bit of feedback, I guess. I like option 3, doing the 3 projects that have a positive return and use the savings to fund as many other projects as we can without incurring additional costs. But I would consider option 4, doing all the projects if the financial impact wasn't too negative for us. And I think we need to talk about that some more, perhaps. As far as I've gotten with it.
Randy, any thoughts?
I'm just gonna wait for more information to come in on this.
So what specifically do you want?
Well, see that sheet, so I'll scroll back through, sorry. Probably as far as options go, three looks good. I also would like to wait and see what our other options are based on our study session with with American Water, I guess, as well. See how that impacts things.
I'm option 4. These are improvements that we need to make. It sounds like a number of these we've already been band-aiding for years, if not decades already. Yeah. Look around our community. Let's not bring things up specifically, but look around our community when public bodies do not invest in the infrastructure that we own. They get to the point of collapse, at the point of, I don't know what to do here, let's just get rid of it and build something new. I think that we have an opportunity here to afford very much needed infrastructure improvements with a unique financing way that we currently can't afford to do any other way. So I don't like spending money any more than any of us do, but we own assets. We own public infrastructure. We own City Hall. We own the fire station. It's our responsibility to make sure that they keep running. So.
And I would agree with that, and I would say I would prefer option 4. The larger that we can reduce our carbon footprint is a best case scenario. That's a really good investment to make. Dylan and I have young kids, Jenny has some young grandkids. Investing in our future means reducing our carbon. You're right, there's really only one time to do this, and this looks like it's the right way.
Alderman Poulos?
I would be in favor of option number 4, as long as I have some assurances that we're not going to have to come back to our constituents and say, by the way, we just committed to a tax increase for the next X number of years to pay for this. I mean, we do have a responsibility to our constituents and to the city.
I too favor option 3 for the most part, or in option 4 with the right deal. Just to let people know how I feel. I do feel that, once again, a majority of what we're talking here does not have an effect on whether we look at privatizing water or sewer. You know, it's the libraries in the City Hall and RIFAC and that sort of thing. They don't have any, the water treatment plant, it does, but the other stuff it does not. And so I think that both of these could work in concurrent sessions for the most part, but.
My concern is if we limit revenue, these expenses still have to be paid. And if you reduce your revenue funding, then where is that money to pay for these going to come from?
Yep. I hate to cut everybody short, as long as I get the key questions or anything else, but we do have another presentation that is also very important to the city. We need to give them time also. We only got about 15 minutes left, unfortunately, here, so try not to run over. So is it okay, Randy, get any other questions? Or?
Yeah, well, I think we'll provide some more detailed information here.
Okay.
Good, thank you guys.
Thank you very much, Johnson Control, and the committee that's here listening to this, and we'll be getting together shortly. I'm hoping to, yes. We might have to delay the meeting.
So,
All right.
hey, Tara, just do like 5 minutes, run through the slides quickly, and because we're just looking for permission to proceed here, we're not looking for permission.
Thank you, Tara.
Looks really good, but we just still feel like we could pursue it.
I will start. We do have a contingency here from Dari. If we want to ask them some questions, we may do that as well. So background, you all know Dari was formed specifically to bring growth in areas relevant to economic development, and Dari and the city have worked together over the years to create opportunities. City staff was asked to explore additional partnership between the city and Dari. For the past 3 years, the city has supported Dari in these ways, mostly programmatic expenses, Live Work Rock Island, a contribution to Dari, and then district events. This growth contribution here was budgeted, however, it was not claimed or requested by growth. So it continues to be a line item for us. Then for 2020, 2022, this is kind of what has been discussed for our next 3-year agreement. So continuing with the Live Work Rock Island program, continuing with the Dari contribution, continuing with that growth contribution, but Dari has the organization has requested that instead of a growth contribution, it would be moved to Dari. And then, as you see, there are a couple more staffing or support roles.
Yeah, so just quickly, what she'll get to in the next slide is the dollar amount we're looking for was $300,000 to make this program happen. And these are items that are already in the budget this year. They would just be directed toward a different area.
These are all Rock Island's expenditures.
They've already approved all these expenditures in the budget.
No new money.
Yep. So this is a way to refocus the money that we have to enhance the agreement we have and increase the services
And in addition to the already provided services, the areas in which we would work more closely together include retail and commercial business attraction, business retention and expansion, support and engagement of local businesses, and then marketing of the community of Rock Island. And so Dari has proposed the development of 4 new committees to assist in engaging both citizens and the business community. Business development, real estate development, economic development, and marketing and events. And I won't read that to you because you all have it sitting. So the way the proposed service costs would break down, $300,000 contribution from the city of Rock Island. Dari would contribute $200,000 from earned project revenues and membership fees. And then you can see the list of the positions and services that would be included in that proposal. So, next steps, if council directs, city staff will negotiate terms of an agreement with Dari, and then that agreement will be brought back to city council for a formal vote and approval. And if the agreement is approved, city staff will work with Dari and their staff to develop a work plan and performance goals to make sure that we all are working together and getting things done. So, questions?
So basically, council had asked us to look at expanding our relationship with Dari to further our economic development. And working with Dari, we are able to come up with a cost that we could cover using our already existing expenses. One of the positions, or one of the portions of that is a position that's open right now in CED, in an economic development position, and that money would then, we would not hire that position. That would be part of the monies paid to Dari, and then Dari would hire 2 positions, actually, then with a marketing side to it also.
Sure,
And we've got some, haven't sent them out because we haven't really flushed them out yet, but there are some examples of job descriptions that we're working on. So.
Correct. You have a draft version attached to your paperwork for review.
These committees, excuse me, talked about, would any elected officials sit on any of those?
That would be a question for our friends over here.
And that'd be something I think we'd work out as we kind of flesh out those committees, but I would expect you certainly would see that on some of those as we pull in the business community and elected officials and citizens.
I want to thank Dari. Since I got on city council, I've tried working really closely with you. I appreciate everything that you've done for the years before I was on city council. It's 1974, right? Way before I was even born. So thank you very much for all of that. And to the executive committee members that are here tonight, I appreciate your investment in this organization that invests in Rock Island and your willingness to take this the next step and really formalize and come together. I think it's an exciting public-private partnership opportunity where the private sector works hand in hand with us and our city staff. We don't have the resources. We're limited here in City Hall. And so this is a nice way to leverage these partnerships. So full steam ahead. If I may, can I ask that a proposal, I don't remember the technical term here, the agreement, can that be ready by next city council meeting?
I would say probably not,
Why not?
because I don't think I can't guarantee that. I mean, I can say we can try to do it, but I can't. There's a lot that goes into that. You know, we've flushed it out, we've looked at it, but it's not, I don't know if it's ready.
I mean, we've been talking about this for months. We didn't approve the consultant from Geneseo, or not Geneseo, from Aledo.
Yep.
I mean, it's been pretty clear that this city council wants this for a
Yep,
while
so we
now.
got through the budget cycle to make sure that council was going to approve the items that were in the budget, and then I think in December is when we met with Eric, and he had kind of fleshed out the different costs there that made it appealing, so we didn't have any additional funds we had to come up with that weren't already budgeted. I'm not saying we can't, but I don't want to promise it, because then if it isn't there, then I'll be asked why it isn't there, so.
Do other council members want to continue going this road, or? Excuse
Go
me.
ahead, Randy.
I think, I agree, let's push forward with this, and I agree with Dylan on this as far as let's get this moving, and can we get some kind of a time frame when you expect this to come?
Well, it
before
would either be
council?
the next meeting or the one after that, and then it would take some time to hire the people. Cindy, what do you think, maybe May before people would be on board?
We would hire the VP of Direct Development Services first, so that we would hope to be able to hire, in the next fairly quickly. The other two, we would look for that person to, hire their staff, so that would be a little bit longer.
So it's a while to get it set up, but we just wanted to get permission to move forward, because the next part is the real work of putting that together and the exact job descriptions, which actually don't have to be done right away. We can craft the agreement, and then the job descriptions come later, that's fine.
Alderman
I
Spruill.
support the proposal as presented and am looking forward to us moving ahead.
And I support it, I want us to take time to do it right and not rush to get something by the next council meeting for an arbitrary reason. I would like to see it set up right, because I think this is a great project for us to do, and sometimes making sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed are much better than rushing something through.
Alderman Poulos.
I would have to agree with Alderwoman Swanson on that. Let's do it right. Not waste time, but let's get it done right.
Alderman Geenan.
I agree, the sooner the better.
Yep.
Yes, I do. I think it's a great partnership, collaboration.
Cindy, do you want to come up and say anything, or I think we've, all right, said it all?
Does anybody have any questions of it? Okay.
Good,
I went
thank
quicker
you.
than I anticipated it to go.
All
All
right.
right. Good, we get 10 minutes, and we'll start city council. Thank you. You don't give those out very easy.
Yeah. Just don't fall in the way. Just don't fall in the way.